lives, and we want our lives to reflect the things that we value the most. There's nothing worse than knowing the person that you want to be, that you're hoping to be, that you're striving to be, and not seeing that person living in real time. That's why we're doing this series that we're calling Beautiful, because God sent his own son into the world to redeem humanity back so that we can live a beautiful life once again, a life that got squandered a long time ago. And as we've been studying these passages, the Beatitudes and the fruit of the Spirit, what we've been finding every step of the way is that what God wants is for the beliefs that we hold to actually transform the way that we live. I was talking to someone the other day and they said, Pastor Daniel, when I hear you speak, you're always talking about the invitations of God, but you don't actually talk about the commandments of God. And I thought it was like a challenge. And I said, well, actually, the commandments of God are an invitation. You know, it's like if I just said, hey, this is what it's gonna be, everyone decides what they wanna do with that, right? And so God could say, this is what your life's supposed to be, but it is an invitation that each one of us needs to respond to, right? And so one of the things that I always encourage people is that as you're hearing Bible teaching, whether it's here at Crossroads or you're picking up podcasts, or you're watching online or TV or the radio, the key is are you taking that information and are you applying it to the way that you live? Like, is it changing the way that you live your life? So one of the things, the beauty for me as a pastor, as a Bible teacher, before I preach a message, like you're all hearing a message and then my encouragement is to live it out. But like if I'm gonna teach it to you, I actually wanna be living it first. Because I don't want to be that guy, you know? I don't want to be that guy who like, I know what it says, but I'm actually not choosing to live it. And so I say, Lord, will you let me live the messages that I had to preach before I preach them so that it's not just like some head information. It's like, it's make it down to my heart. And so whatever I would do is I would tell you, don't pray that prayer. And the reason why is because God makes you live that stuff out. So sure enough, perfect example of my life and this text that we're gonna study today. You know, my family just got off of, you know, it was spring break. And so, you know, we jumped on a plane, we went down to the Bay Area to see Lynn's family. Perfect plan we had. It was perfect. And the plan is that we were gonna fly back yesterday morning. We had an early flight out. We were gonna be home by 8 o'clock in the morning so that we would have everything all squared away. But sure enough, we got home at 10:30 last night. Now, what happened, it was amazing. So we get to the airport, we have an early flight, you know, and we have little kids, so it's not like anyone's sleeping in my house anyway, right? And so sure enough, we get to the airport, plenty of time. Now, I'm notorious in traveling because I travel so much that I like a little adventure in my life, so I want to be cutting it close. You know, and so there are pastors on our staff who won't travel with me for this reason, because I stress them out, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like a good trip if we're not running in the airport a little bit, you know? But there's Lynn and the kids, and so like, I'm a practical person, and so I'm like, listen, we'll get there. We got there early, sure enough, you know, because I travel so much, I have that TSA PreCheck, and so I get the boarding passes. Me and Obadiah and Maranatha, two of my kids, we're all TSA PreCheck, but Lynn and Annabelle are not. So sure enough, I go over there and, you know, and I like to talk. So I'm like schmoozing with the TSA people. And, you know, I'm like, listen, we're a family, come on. And so like, well, the baby can go through, but Lynn, she's got to go. But we'll let her go through the priority line. So it won't take that long. So sure enough, me, Obadiah, Maranatha, and Annabelle, we like walk through, you know, there was like nobody there. We're like, this is great, right? And then Lynn's standing there and it's not like a long line, but she's not going anywhere. 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Then she's finally like, look, why don't you go get coffee? I'll want it when I get through this line. And so sure enough, I hear final boarding, Portland, Oregon. And I'm like, oh, and Lynn's, I'm like, where is she? I got about 10 people to go. And so I'm like, okay, we're gonna run down there and I'm gonna start working on the gate people to keep the thing open. You know what I mean? And so sure enough, me and Annabelle and Obadiah and Maranatha, we're running down to the gate. Now, what's funny is you see all your personalities at work because, you know, Maranatha is very upset because Maranatha is a perfectionist. So being late is like a bad thing, right? And so Maranatha's upset that we're late. And Annabelle's finally like, she'll run all day long unless you ask her to run. And she's like, I don't want to run. You know what I mean? Because she's 4. And so this is all going on. And then finally, as we're running to the gate, it dawns on Maranatha, are we gonna leave mommy behind? And so Maranatha gets very upset. And I'm like, Maranatha, I'm not gonna leave mommy, come on. Like, and so I get to the gate, sure enough. And you know what it's like when you fly certain airline carriers. I couldn't get any. I'm like, listen, man, I got these 3 kids. If we don't get this flight, we're gonna be in the airport all day, and everyone's gonna have a terrible airport experience because my kids are crazy. Like, you just hold it for 5 minutes, and I'm like trying everything, and they're like, no. And so sure enough, the gate closes, we're stuck there. Yeah, this is my story, And so sure enough, 5 minutes later, Lynn shows up running. I'm here. I'm like, well, we just missed the flight. Don't worry about it, And so then you start going through all the rigmaroles of like, how do you get a new flight? And so sure enough, I go and the airline carrier that we will not name ever again in my life, we go there like, well, we can get you out tomorrow morning. You could be home at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm like, I actually got something I got to do tomorrow morning, So that's not gonna work. And so we're planning all this stuff out, and everyone's, Maranatha's fine. I'm like, look, we didn't leave mommy behind. We're never gonna leave mommy behind. No problem. Everyone's fine. And then sure enough, I sit down and I'm finally like, I get everything dialed in, and I'm frustrated. And I look over at Lynn, my wife, and she goes, and I look at her, she smiles, she's like, God's got a good plan. So like, at 6 o'clock in the morning, I don't have like a grip on my body language. You know what I mean? There's no grip. So like, I like rolled my eyes. I think I made like the gag sign, like, And she's like, no, Daniel, listen, there's a million reasons why we had to miss that flight. And I'm like, thinking to myself, I'm like, you're the one who was late, No, it wasn't even her fault, you know what I mean? It's like 90 minutes to get through a line of 30 people at TSA. And so like, I'm just sitting there just like, and as we're leaving, and we decide we get a rental car for the day, and then everything worked out. Like the rental car, we just dropped the car off, they gave us the car back, you know what I mean? And so we're just like rolling, and then Lynn's like, Daniel, I mean, like, what's the chances of us missing that flight? I'm like 50-50. I'm this grumpy. I'm just like, I'm tired. I had a whole plan. I was gonna get home. We're gonna get the life back together. I was gonna catch a nap, be all ready for church on Sunday. And it was broken. It wasn't even broken. It was like the thing just got shattered. And then finally, we're driving back to the airport at night to get on the plane. And Lynn's like, Dan, you know what I think really happened? I think there's some other people who needed to be home because maybe there's something going on in their families. And they needed our seats more than we did. Now at that point, now I'm like super convicted. Because I realized like my wife has got the right perspective and I'm just grumpy. You know what I mean? And it dawned on me, it was like the perfect light bulb, because as we see the beatitude and the fruit of the Spirit that we're gonna see today, what I realized is that in that moment, as much as I love Jesus, I'm a pastor, I'm a Bible teacher, all this stuff, where the rubber meets the road in your life, you get to choose how you wanna see things, and you get to choose who you wanna be in that moment. And I wasn't angry. Like, I'm not like an angry person, so I wasn't yelling at the gate agent, but I wanted to, And when they told me they couldn't get me out today, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, But then there's my wife with her perspective. It's powerful. So in order to see this, I want you to open up your Bibles to Matthew chapter 5. We're gonna be taking Matthew 5 verse 9, and we're gonna be linking it to its fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5:22. So if you didn't bring a Bible with you to church today, don't worry, because your smartphones are still smart, or at least we hope. You type in Matthew 5:9, you can get it that way, or there's the Bibles on the seats in front of you. At this point in this series, I'm sure most of the Bibles on our seats probably just open to Matthew chapter 5, which has been taking some time here. But it says this, Matthew 5:9, it says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And then we're linking it to, of course, that seventh fruit of the Spirit, but the fruit of the Spirit is faithfulness. Now, we've been memorizing these two sections together as a church, so we're all gonna repeat this out together, because as you say it out, it'll get in your heart a little bit better. So read it with me. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God, and the fruit of the Spirit is faithfulness. Now, don't forget, all the way through we've been seeing that this word blessed, it means, oh, how happy, oh, how fortunate, how highly favored are, and here we have the peacemakers. Now, I got something super deep for you all, and you're gonna love this. Peacemakers make peace. Boom. Everyone's got that, right? Peacemakers make peace. And it says, oh, how happy, oh, how fortunate, oh, how blessed and lucky by God's amazing grace are the people who are peacemakers, and peacemakers make peace. Now, the reason I share that story with you is my wife in that moment was a textbook peacemaker. Because could you imagine if I'm all hot under the collar trying to figure out how I'm getting my family home, and I gotta get to church, and there's lots to do, we got these little kids and all this stuff, and my wife's like, I can't believe we missed that flight, and she starts slamming things down, and she's up at the counter, like we're tag teaming the counter people, you know what I mean? I get all crazy, and then she comes in, you know? Is that making peace for anybody? Like either way, we missed the flight, right? Right, so no amount of yelling is gonna get us on that flight. Right? So not only is she making peace with me and our kids, she's giving our kids like a whole perspective on inconvenience. Like my wife lived out a theology of inconvenience yesterday. And it was mind-blowing. And because of that, everything else changed because my wife was making peace in the midst of a situation that had all sorts of lack of peace to it. My own fears, our kids, all this stuff. How many times have you been in the airport and you watch someone yell at the gate agent? I was gonna ask how many of you did it, but I know you wouldn't be honest at church about that. See, a peacemaker is somebody who in a world characterized by conflict and rivalry is somebody who proactively seeks to fix what is broken. See, it doesn't just say the peaceful. It doesn't say blessed are the peaceful. It's someone who is proactive in the midst of a conflict and rivalry and discord, is proactive at fixing things. And my friends, this is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Now, the word peace, as Jesus used it, is linked to the Hebrew word shalom. And the best definition I ever found of this word shalom or peace comes from a man named Cornelius Plan. So I try and read this quote as many times as I can because it's the best definition of peace that I've ever found anywhere. He said it this way. He says, we call it peace, but it means far more than mere peace of mind or a ceasefire between enemies. In the Bible, shalom means universal flourishing, wholeness, and delight. The webbing together of God, humans, and all creation in justice, fulfillment, and delight. It's a rich state of affairs where natural needs are satisfied and natural giftings are fruitfully employed, all under the arch of God and in his love. Shalom, in other words, is the way things ought to be. That's a powerful quote, isn't it? Now, I would read it again, but you're not gonna write it down anyway. You can pick it up online, or I gave you his name, Cornelius Plan. You can find a definition of peace. It's the best definition I ever heard, because we often think of a peacemaker as somebody who things are broken and they're trying to get in there and help, or somebody who in the midst of brokenness has got like that kind of like that, the Yoda calm, so to speak, right? But peacemaking in the Bible is about something totally different. It's the way a person who is a follower of Jesus lives, inspired by the Holy Spirit, that is seeking to remake the world in a way that the world is broken, to remake it that everything works together in the way things ought to work. Now, when I use a definition like that, I realize that for most of us, you start freaking out because you're like, wow, we are so far from that right now. And listen, we are so far from that right now. There's never been a generation that has ever experienced shalom like I just explained, except for Adam and Eve in the garden before they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That was the only time in the history of humanity that everything worked the way it was supposed to. Milton said it was paradise lost. But part of the story of Jesus is paradise being regained, reacquired. And what God is looking to do in your life and in my life, in this generation, is for that as we respond to Jesus, we become proactive makers of peace. All things working together the way that they should, universal flourishing on this side of eternity. That's what God has redeemed us for. See, to me, this is important because so often in church we hear about Jesus, his death and his resurrection, which is the good news. But that good news now has radical implications on how you live your life. It's not enough to say, I believe in Jesus. He died and he rose again for me, and I am just as a maker of rivalry and conflict as somebody who doesn't know Jesus. See, the cross bears down on our realities. The cross bears down on the way that we handle ourselves in the midst of conflict. But for so many of us as followers of Jesus, we're allowing a world of conflict to now say, I believe in Jesus, but I'm just as conflict creating as somebody who doesn't know Jesus, which is not the good news of Jesus. If you're here today, and I believe many of you are, where you've put your faith and trust in Jesus, the cross and the empty tomb has radical implications on how you live. And one of the ways that the cross transforms the way that we live is now we are not conflict creators, we are peacemakers. Now you have to ask yourself, is that you? Are you a conflict maker or a peacemaker? Now, I know right now, I've been in a Christian long enough, been in church long enough that everyone's like, oh, I'm a peacemaker, right? Of course I am, I'm a Christian. Are you really? Like, how much discord are you finding yourself involved in? How much discord are you unilaterally creating in your relationships, on your job? See, what I find as a follower of Jesus, part of this is that I know the Bible well enough that I can have all these ways that I can justify being a conflict creator. Well, I've found my boldness in Christ, speaking truth to power. Okay. So you have to realize your and my standard for living is Jesus. You know what they said about Jesus? Listen to this. A prophecy about Jesus, Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. You know this, you've heard this Christmas time every year. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. And the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of his increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forevermore. And the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Now, you get that, how Jesus, he comes and he's all these things. He's the Prince of Peace, and the government will be upon it. He holds the government up. So in our peacemaking, we realize that all of us as the body of Christ with unique giftings and talents and passions all find avenues within this world to be proactive makers of peace. See, God doesn't want us to be monolithic in our peacemaking efforts. He realized that he's created all of us with unique talents and gifts that he wants to use, that in every area of society, there are proactive makers of the way things ought to be. So the key for each one of us is, what is that area of passion that you're pursuing that you are proactively making peace, changing the world in small ways that now all of a sudden the world is being transformed by Jesus through your life. All of us should have these areas. All of us should. None of us should say, there's not an area that I am working proactively to make peace. And here's the thing, in a lot of those areas, there is a lot of conflict. Like, I'm a big fan of people being passionate about politics, right? I mean, people are gonna be passionate about it anyway. I'm very concerned with the way as followers of Jesus, we hold that passion. Because the world we live in says, if you have a political bent, you are only conflict driven. And then that filters into the body of Christ, where instead of being peacemakers, even though you have different visions on how the world should work, a Christian in the political sphere who's angry is useless. So we have to hold those politics and channel that passion in a way that we are still making peace even when we disagree with somebody on how it's supposed to work. So the key for each one of us, what are those areas of passion that God has for you? And are you proactively making peace? Are you saying, I'm gonna invest my time and my energy, my talents and my treasures in areas of brokenness in this world in such a way that small changes occur? Now listen, many of us, we don't get involved at all because we feel like it's too big and I'll never get to anywhere. It's like, what can I do? Listen, Teresa of Calcutta said it this way: if you want to feed 100 people who are starving, start with just one. See, we have to learn how to just take the step that we're on, to do what's right in front of us, and don't despise the days of small beginnings. Don't think that it's inconsequential to change one person's life. Don't think it's not worth your energy to try and do good for one person. Because what happens is you do good for one person and then they know somebody, and then before you know it, as you continue to walk in this peacemaking journey that God has you on, before you know it, you're like, I don't even know how I got here. Like there's a man named Jean Vanier, and brilliant guy, but he saw in his generation, this was in the 50s, the way that they treated people with serious mental and physical disabilities. They were pulled away from society. They were kept, they didn't want to infect other people. That was the way it was. And this man said, this is wrong. And so he decided that he was going to invite 2 of these men into his home. And because he wanted them to live with dignity and with community, right? And he called it the Ark. In his heart, God was inviting him to save these people from the destruction of anonymity. And now across the world, there's 300 arks where all these people are. And obviously, as he did that, the culture has changed with the way it feels about people with disabilities. Not scared. Now it's like, these are our most vulnerable that we care for. But it began with one man taking a step with 2 guys. And now a generation later, there are tens of thousands of people who are being touched. And the influence of that, what he did, has influenced all these other things. But it began with one man choosing to do something that mattered. So peacemakers make peace. And listen, the greatest way to make peace is to be at peace with God. That's the thing. I've always said it. That's the downside of the hippie movement. The give peace a chance movement. It's the right idea, but if you don't have peace first with God and then the peace of God, you can't ever have external peace. So the good news of Jesus is the ultimate act of peacemaking, but then all of the implications of what it means to be at peace with God, that is all the reality of how we live our lives every day. So peacemakers make peace. And then we see again in Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemaker, for they shall be called what? Sons of God. So I'd say it this way: peace characterizes God's family. Peace characterizes God's family. Now, of course I need to say it that when 2,000 years ago, when Jesus spoke these things, when it says, for they shall be called sons of God, this was still a time when people would think of mankind, speaking of all of humanity. Now we live in a culture that is sensitive to gender distinctions. So when in the Bible, when he says sons of God, it means sons and daughters of God, right? If Jesus said these words today, he'd probably say, these are the children of God, right? Because now we live in a gender neutral, sensitive environment. So when Jesus says the son of God, he means the people of God. All of the family of God. It doesn't mean that he only likes guys, none of that kind of stuff, right? Because every once in a while people say, I can't read the Bible because it says sons of God and my brothers. And what about the women? It's like, oh, hello, you know. But people get weird, you know. It's like it's an antique document. It's like this is from 2,000 years ago. They had a different set of things they were looking at. They weren't worried about that at this point. But what it means is that as men and women of God, those of you who are born again, who are children of God, you've been born again by Jesus, guess what? You should be a peacemaker. It's the characteristic of God's family. And this is a reality for all of us. Now, of course, it says in Isaiah 52, verse 7, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who proclaims peace, who brings glad tidings of good things, who proclaims salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. So the good news of Jesus is the good news. We proclaim that peace. You know, it's been beautiful as we went through our Easter season. We always do this each one reach one, where this year I think we collect about 3,400 names of people. People who are saying, these are people who I know and love who don't yet know Jesus. Some of you who are here today, you may have been written on that list, that you got invited and you're here today because somebody who cares about you says, I'm walking with Jesus and Jesus is doing a work in my life and I want this for my friends. I want this for my loved ones. I want this for my coworkers. And one of the reasons we do that is because we want us as a church family to realize that the ultimate act of peacemaking is Jesus on the cross. It is textbook peacemaking. Listen, if you look at any movement of reconciliation, whether it's racial, whether it's ethnic, whether it's based on gender, almost everybody, when they talk about the philosophy of reconciliation, will always use Jesus. You know why? Because in order for peace to be made, somebody has to be self-sacrificial. In areas of conflict, self-sacrifice has to happen. Somebody has to be willing to take it on the proverbial chin in aspects of reconciliation. Like you look at what's going on right now. If we were going to pray, and I think we should, that the US government and its partisan polarization of Democrat and Republican would actually, oh my goodness, work together, like we teach ourselves in elementary school, work together. If that was gonna happen, you realize that both sides need to take it on the chin. But you know what it is? Right as in the last administration, right as a Republican senator would work with a Democratic president, they'd get voted out of office the next go around. Right now in this environment, if a Democratic senator were to work with a Republican president, guess what happens in the next cycle? They get voted out of office. And my friends, this is why, this is where it is. Because in order for peace to be made, guess what? Someone has to be willing to sacrifice. And my friends, Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. You realize that the cross of Jesus, it's all about God saying, you, me, the world is broken, and in order to fix it, Jesus is gonna stand in our place. The good news is not that Jesus got things wrong. The good news is that Jesus got everything right, and he stood in our place, and we get things wrong. And he dies for us even knowing that we still get things wrong, but he's like, I'm gonna take it on the chin, so to speak. I'm gonna receive what you deserve because you can't handle it, and someone needs to be willing to die so reconciliation can happen. I mean, you look at the civil rights movement. How many people took things on the chin for that? You look at any situation. I mean, you think of World War II. In order for the Jewish people still to be alive today, how many servicemen from all different nations gave up their life fighting Nazis? See, Jesus shows us that reconciliation and peacemaking is costly. And that's another reason why people don't do it today. You realize if you want to be a proactive peacemaker in the brokenness in your family, on your job, in this world, you have to be willing to die a little for it to happen. And when people don't follow the quintessential peacemaker Jesus, you can't give what you don't have. You can't give it. Our culture doesn't value peacemaking at all because we don't have any models of it in our secular society. We don't have any models of it because we've divorced ourselves from Jesus. But for those of you who are here who are followers of Jesus, guess what? This is the journey we're on. And when I hear about church splits, this thing, that thing, I'm like, blessed are the peacemaker, for they shall be called the family of God. So listen, we can't change other things, other people, but we all have control over us. How are you doing being a great example of a characteristic of the family of God? Are you proactively making peace? Are you willing to die a little bit so others may have life? This is the journey of what it means to live the beautiful life that Jesus died and rose again that we'd have. Now, to link it now with our fruit of the Spirit, the fruit of peacemaking is faithfulness. Now, think about how powerful that is for a second, right? Because we see, blessed are the peacemaker, for they shall be called sons of God. And then you link it, the seventh beatitude with the seventh characteristic of the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of peacemaking is faithfulness. Now, I think this is kind of powerful because when peace is not there, very often people want to make peace, but at some point they fatigue in the process, right? Like if peace doesn't happen in a moment, right? Then finally forget this, it's not working. And then you link it this idea that the fruit of peacemaking is faithfulness. You and I need to continue to be steady on in the passion and the reality that making peace is costly, and you have to be willing to continue to pay the cost. Now, think about this in your own relationship with Jesus. How faithful has Jesus been to you? I mean, has anyone, when you gave your life to Jesus, on the day you said yes to Jesus and God justified you, he put you at peace with himself, how many of you every single day since then, you've been rock solid? Anybody? Anybody just like, I've been so rock solid every single, no one has been. But Jesus has been what? He's faithful. See, Jesus doesn't quit when it gets hard or when he gets tired. Jesus just keeps on showing up. And that's how peacemaking happens. You have to be willing just to keep on showing up, good times and bad times, when you feel like it, when you don't. And faithfulness is in short supply in our generation, isn't it? People who can be faithful and steady on. I mean, Proverbs 28:20 says it this way: a faithful man will abound with blessings. A faithful person will abound with blessings. But how are you doing being faithful? Listen to what it says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 13. It says, if we are faithless, he is still faithful. Why? He can't deny himself. See, God is ever faithful. And he will always be faithful. It's who he is. And in order for peace to be made, faithfulness is a necessity. Now, here's the thing about faithfulness. The reason it's so easy to not be faithful is because faithfulness is hard. Because faithfulness costs, doesn't it? And do you see how powerful this is though? Because it costs, that's what makes it so important. I mean, in order to be married to the same person through every up and down of life, that's a big cost, isn't it? All the wives are like, amen. Amen. I just hope to make it through football season, right? There's a cost to it. In order to be a faithful friend, there's a cost to it. You know, I've heard it said, you'll know who your friends are by who's around when everything's going wrong. I mean, it's real easy to be a great friend when everything's awesome, when it's all going great. But when things are hitting the skids, then you really know who your friends are, right? And this is what faithfulness is all about. It's the ability to continue to abide and show up and be there even when things are bad. And my friends, listen, Jesus is the most faithful person who's ever lived. I mean, when a follower of Jesus makes terrible decisions, does Jesus ever just abandon them? No. I mean, you see Peter denied Jesus, and then Jesus restores him and cooks him a meal. David dishonored God, but Jesus wasn't done with him. Now here's the thing, obviously Jesus is perfect, and we are not. But God invites each one of us, although imperfect, just to keep showing up. You know, I was thinking about this because yesterday was the 5th anniversary of when I became lead pastor here at Crossroads. Someone on staff sent me a picture of that day when Pastor Bill and the board and the leaders laid hands on Lynn and myself. I can't believe it's been 5 years. You know, it feels like 5 minutes and 500 lifetimes, all in the same thing, you know? It's a beautiful thing. But when I think about faithfulness, I think about our founding pastor and his family. You know, it's like just to keep showing up. I mean, I think about Pastor Bill showing up to preach at Crossroads for 40 years, Sunday after Sunday, in times of great blessing and times of great challenge and good economies and bad economies and great moments and terrible moments. And I think we need more pictures of that. I think of Pastor Bill's bride, Betty, still in kids ministry. She's been doing kids ministry for 40 years. And there's a whole crew of folks who have been part of the Crossroads family, have been doing kids ministry here for like 35 years. And they keep showing up, next generation of kids, next generation of kids, next generation of parents. And they just keep steady on, good days and bad days, up days and down days. Bear markets, bull markets, good and bad, just keep showing up. And you know what's amazing? For the people who have that kind of a testimony in their life, they can share all the stories of what God has done. But unfortunately, for many of us, we're there when it's good and we eject when it gets hard. But the fruit of the Spirit is faithfulness. Brothers and sisters, listen. If you're here and you're already a follower of Jesus, because Jesus has always been faithful by you, he just invites you just to keep showing up. Just keep fighting for what you know is right. You fight for your marriage. You fight for your kids. You fight for the relationships that God has given you. And it doesn't mean that you show up and it's always perfect. You're definitely not perfect. You don't handle it right every time. But you gotta keep showing up. That's what faithfulness is. And if you show up long enough with a humble heart and you keep on going, you're gonna get somewhere and you're gonna be grateful that you got there. Our culture says, if it's too much trouble, throw it out and buy a new one. And our culture is wrong. And you know what? Many of us know what it's like to be treated that way. You're there as long as someone needs you, and then when they don't need you anymore, they just discard you, go find a new toy, a neater toy, a cleaner toy, a toy that doesn't have history. But God has called us to a beautiful, different way. And when I look at the world in which we live in today, my friends, my hope and prayer is that the people of God will rise up and make peace. Be drivers of universal flourishing and wholeness, everything, God, people, all creation working together in the way it's supposed to. And that when people think of followers of Jesus, they would think to themselves, they're just like Jesus who makes peace. And that we wouldn't just show up in a moment of excitement, but we would show up day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, generation after generation, with the good news and all that that good news implies. Now listen, I also believe that there's some of you right now who you're hearing this and you've never before put your faith and trust in Jesus. And Jesus came to make peace with you, and he gave up his life for you. And listen, and you might be saying, I don't believe in Jesus, but this whole peacemaking thing, I think it's good. Listen, you can't give what you don't have. You cannot give what you have not yet received. And I believe that you're here today because Jesus is inviting you, saying, hey, look, I wanna make peace with you. I wanna give you peace with God, and I wanna give you my own peace that will guard your heart and mind, that every single day you don't have to be anxious, but you will know that I'm doing a work so that I can now lead you into this world as a peacemaker. And if you're here today and you've never before said yes to Jesus, I'm gonna give you an opportunity in just a moment to make that decision, to make that commitment, to surrender your life to the Prince of Peace, that now he may receive you and do a work in you as he transforms you. And that transformation will start moving through your life into this world. And if you've yet to say yes to Jesus, my hope is that as he invites you, you'll just say yes. So let's bow our heads and our hearts as we pray together.